Good evening and welcome to the webinar. My name is Roisin White and I'm a Communications Executive here at Fingal County Council, and I'll be your host for tonight's webinar, which is part of the public consultation on the draft active travel strategy for Fingal. Tonight we'll present you with the contents of a draft document and speak to you about what the next steps in using this document will be, and we'll also very much look forward to taking your questions. This webinar will be recorded and that recording will be made available on our website in the coming days. This public consultation began on April 4th and will end on the 23rd of May. This period is to allow enough time for everyone who is interested in the topic and in the document to read it, understand it, and tell us what they think. You can share your thoughts with us by making a submission. Submissions can be made by individuals or by groups who may wish to bring their opinions together as one, for example, residents associations, commercial associations, or clubs. And if you'd like to make a submission, you can do so at consult.fingal.ie. You can also make your submission by post if you prefer, and details of how to do that are contained online at consult.fingal.ie also. We'll begin shortly with a presentation from Sinead Murphy, who's Senior Engineer here at Fingal County Council within the Department of the Environment, Climate Action and Active Travel. And she'll be joined by her colleague Kieran Marr, also from Fingal County Council, and Paul Osborne of our consultants firm Sistra. They'll be answering your questions as we finish the presentation this evening. This online event is your opportunity to ask questions of the team, and we really look forward to hearing your queries this evening. This is the first of two webinars. The next one will take place on May the 9th. It'll also be recorded, and you can register for that session in advance at consult.fingal.ie also. Please do share those details with your friends, neighbours and colleagues if you think it's a topic they might also be interested in, as everyone is very welcome to these sessions. If you have a question, you can enter it in the Q&A box. You'll find the Q&A box in the top right of your screen. We're really looking forward to getting your questions this evening, and we're expecting quite a high volume of them. As lots of people tend to ask similar questions on webinars, what we might do, you might find we'll paraphrase or merge some questions together in order to get through as many of them as possible this evening. But if you don't hear your question read out exactly as you wrote it, please don't be alarmed. All of your questions as written will be provided to the project team and they'll be read by the project team in full. If we do come into any technical issues this evening, which we certainly hope we won't, please bear with us while we get them resolved. In the very unlikely event that the webinar stops for any reason, please check the email address that you used to register for this webinar, as that's where we'll send you a new link if that is the case. Thanks again for taking the time to join us this evening. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to hand over now to Sinead Murphy to begin her presentation. Take it away, Sinead.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to just share my screen now and run through a presentation on the new active travel strategy. Now, everybody can see that. Today we're here to talk about the draft Fingal active travel strategy, which is, as Roisin has mentioned, is currently out for public consultation. I'm just going to go through tonight the background to the Fingal active travel strategy that's in draft format at the moment, the policy and the strategy context, the methodology we've used to get to this place where we're at now, and some of the contents of the strategy and an overview of the strategy and the next steps where we're going after this. Our Fingal development plan is in draft format at the moment for the 2023 to 2029 a development plan, and that is currently under review. And in that, we have an objective, which is to prepare an active travel strategy to encourage active travel and modal shift to sustainable transport modes. And as part of that active travel strategy that we've prepared, Sistra, who are consultants, were commissioned to draft and consult on the active travel strategy. And Paul Osborne, as Roisin has mentioned, is on the line also here tonight from Sistra. Just in terms of the policy and the strategy context, this is the hierarchy where our active travel strategy falls in terms of planning and policy context. At national level, we have the National Planning Framework, the National Development Plan, and the Planning Land Use and Transport Outlook. And at regional level, we have what's called the RSES, the Regional Space Economic Strategy for the Eastern and Midlands region. And we have also got the Greater Dublin Area Transport Strategy, which was published this year. And sorry, that's at public consultation stage, at the third stage. And local planning, we have the Fingal Development Plan, as I mentioned, is currently under review, and local transport implementation plans and local economic and community plans. And all of them sit within the hierarchy of structure, and the active travel strategy will fall out of all of them. Again, in terms of policy context, this is the various different documents and what they aim to achieve. The Project Ireland 2040 Project Ireland 2040 National Development Plan and the planning framework itself. We've got the Climate Action Plan 2021, includes a target for an additional 500,000 daily active travel journeys and public transport trips by 2030. We have both the national, the sectoral, and indeed Fingal county climate action plans. And the National Sustainable Mobility Policy, that's just recently been released, 2022 to 2030, sets out strategic framework and action plan to meet climate plan obligations. We've the road safety strategy launched at the end of 2021 with a Vision Zero approach aimed at eradicating road traffic deaths and serious injuries by 2050. And then the draft Greater Dublin Area Transport Strategy, as I mentioned, is currently out to consultation, and it aims to treble cycle trips by 2042 to bring it up to 12% of daily journeys. In terms of methodology, our consultants have undertaken a policy and evidence review. A draft strategy document has been prepared. We have done considerable internal consultation because active travel really does have a kind of a finger into each of the other different departments across the organisation, including our colleagues, for example, in planning and strategic infrastructure, operations department, economic development, tourism, etc., etc. So there was considerable consultation there. Then we presented to the Transport and Infrastructure Management Strategic Policy Committee on the 9th of March, received quite well at that. A briefing to councillors on the 31st of March. Stakeholder engagement has been ongoing through March 2021 and into April. And here tonight we're on the online public consultations in April and May. As Roisin has mentioned, there's 2 different dates. Excuse me. And we'll prepare a report on the public consultation and put the themes of the submissions, and we'll have a look at them and revise as appropriate, finalise the strategy itself in June and July and present back to the Strategic Policy Committee. In terms of content, these are the chapter headings: vision, benefits of active travel, policy context, strategy, themes and pillars, some case studies, changing behaviour, leadership, governance and partnerships, funding, and value for money, strategy and outcomes. And I've just focused in on a few of these that I want to bring to your attention. The vision for the active travel strategy states that our vision for Fingal is to ensure that walking, cycling and wheeling will be the first and the natural choice for everyday journeys for people of all ages and ability to travel to schools, shops, or socially to work or to the city centre. We'll achieve this vision by putting active travel first in our planning, design and delivery of infrastructure and initiatives. This gives an overview. This is the first page, I think, of this chapter, but just 2 pieces of this page I want to bring to your attention. Well, one is the text and one is the actual schematic of it. The schematic at the bottom shows you the transport users hierarchy. This is government policy, has been part of design manual for urban roads and streets since 2009, and lots of other government policy has this quoted. In essence, pedestrians are put as prioritised at the top, cyclists next, public transport next, goods vehicles, and then the private motor car. And I suppose in essence that mirrors the carbon emissions of each of those means of transport, pedestrians having none, and so on down the line. So in essence, this is what we're trying to do in active travel, is to ensure that we implement this policy, because I suppose most of us can see that while this is government policy, when we are out there on the roads, pedestrians and cyclists are not necessarily prioritised everywhere we go. So we're just trying to redress that balance and ensure the government policy is implemented into the future. And I suppose the next one shows the benefits of active travel, and they are many, not just the climate action piece. I think it's really important to be clear about that one. There will be fewer car journeys, reduced noise level, improved air quality, improved safety on the roads, and that's particularly important for vulnerable road users and in particular for children. And we would hope that some of the implementation that we put in place here will enhance the independence of children, maybe bring some of that back to them. Social inclusion, because obviously it's cheaper and easier to go on foot or by bike rather than trying to achieve to own your own car. Sustainable economic growth, access to leisure opportunities, increased access to employment, improved health and well-being, and obviously that's an obvious one. And of course, this is all wrapped up in addressing the climate emergency. These are the strategy themes that we have laid out, and it's kind of in essence everything we do in the Active Travel Unit in Fingal County Council. It falls in under these these 6 main headings. Strategic planning is the one I should have at the top, and that's all the pieces that link into the hierarchy of planning policy and planning framework and so on. So, for example, all the work we have recently done and we're currently underway with in terms of the ensuring active travel is represented well across all sections of that county development plan, as I've mentioned earlier on, and also all the other strategic pieces like the Greater Dublin transport strategy and so on. The other themes under which we're doing our work, we're looking at protected cycleways, and in some cases that's cycleways that are on roads already that just haven't been protected or segregated, and we are just enhancing them, or in other cases there is no cycleways and we are reallocating the road space to put in segregated cycleways. Because they're obviously safer than ones that are simply painted with delineated with paint. We're also looking at towns and villages and places where the public realm can be enhanced, where we reduce the priority of motor vehicles and increase the access to various different places on foot and by bike, and we maybe bring back some of the public space back to the people in towns and villages. Connectivity is another important one, where we're taking a lot of requests, but we're also undertaking a number of investigations and site visits to see if there's places where we can put in small improvements. Maybe there's a barrier up or a fence up that is preventing children getting to school that they can actually see across that fence, and currently they're driving a circuitous route to get to that place. And I have a particular example in mind where the children are about 100 meters from their school, but they're being driven 2 or 3 kilometers around the way to get to it. Road safety is another one, and under this heading we are currently rolling out the Safer Routes to School programme, which has been handled nationally by Antashka, and that is looking at I suppose exactly what it says, looking at safer routes to school and how we can make it safer, particularly in front of the schools, but also a little bit further away from the schools where, again, there may be connectivity, permeability issues, or maybe it might be a bit safer if there was segregated cycleway or improved footpath, etc. So we're working our way through them across the county. And then the final one is mobility, and this is just everything from bike share schemes, e-bike share schemes, e-cargo bikes that we've given out to on a service level agreement to a number of businesses in Fingal, just to see how that goes. We're also looking at potentials in the future if there is legislation in place for e-scooters. Also initiatives that promote mobility and active travel, such as Bike Week or upcoming Flavours of Fingal, where we'll have stand and so on. So that one is all about behaviour change. I think it's really important to note that we're building on success. This isn't something that's just suddenly started. There's a lot of work been done over the last number of years, both in terms of development management, strategic planning, and I suppose with our operations department as well under the road safety heading. These are just examples of 3 schemes which have been very successful so far. New Street pedestrianised zone in Malahide, and obviously that's been pedestrianised now since 2020 on foot of COVID, and again in 2021, and we are looking at a full public realm scheme there to improve the actual look and feel of the street following the pedestrianisation. Baldoyle to Portmarnock Greenway, and everybody knows the success of that one, and obviously there's more coming to link up to that, so we're building on the success of that one. And the Bleeper bike share scheme, which has been in Fingal for a number of years. And obviously it took an enormous spike there during COVID. Now it's leveled off a little bit, although I think it is up a bit, but it's been hugely successful and great one where you want to do one-way trips or you don't have access to a bike. These ones are more about behavior change, and I think it's really important that we note that there's a couple of different things that we need to do here. In terms of engagement, we've engaged, as I've mentioned earlier on, very significantly across the various different departments. We don't just need to convince people outside of Fingal. Sometimes I need to convince my colleagues in Fingal as well, which is, I think, is really important that we're all talking off the same hymn sheet. And we also looking at cross-departmental, but multidisciplinary teams. Sometimes maybe these schemes were very much engineer-led. Nothing wrong with engineers. I'm an engineer myself, but I think it's really important that we get all the disciplines involved here. So as such, we have environmentalists, architects, planners, communications team, etc., etc., so that we're all pulling together and we're bringing it along on a very even keel. Externally, we've consulted quite significantly with the elected representatives, and we've had great support thus far. Obviously, the elected representatives know the lie of the land quite well, so that's helped hugely. We've engaged with stakeholder groups as well across the county and continuing to do so, and will be doing so on all the projects in the future. Community groups, sports groups, economic groups such as chambers of commerce, etc., etc. And of course the citizens themselves that are involved in all of these things. The enablement piece is really, in essence, and I've been lucky enough to be in Netherlands and Copenhagen cycling in the last while, and one thing that really strikes you is it's very easy, it's convenient, and it's easy. So that's one of our main themes here, is put it there, make it easy, make it the obvious choice, make it fun, and make it accessible. And once you build the infrastructure, maybe bring some initiatives in behind them to help people, to show them how to use it, to show them where it is, and to encourage them to use it. And again, focus everything we're doing in terms of putting things in place on that transport users hierarchy that I mentioned earlier on. Under the communications piece, it's really important that we explain things to people and we engage with people. And we have a communication strategy within our active travel department and a communications plan for each project that we're putting in place, because not every project will be the same. But on the ground, it's really important that we have social signalling and visibility of our projects. And by that, I mean, we want people to know where the infrastructure is, what's happening, and how things are going. So, for example, having a really nice free-flowing cycle lane right beside a congested road might just encourage people a little bit more to get out of their cars and maybe consider the journeys that they're able to do, the shorter journeys, maybe to do them on foot or by bike. And also things like cycle counters and so on, showing how many people have passed this point on a bike today. That's really effective. They have a lot of them also in Netherlands and Copenhagen. In terms of training advice, assistance to using new assets may be important for some people. Some people haven't been on a bike in a long time and they maybe need skills training, or they maybe need new equipment, or maybe need just a bit of encouragement. And we've also got cycling and walking officers just appointed. Our first one, we will have two. Our first one is starting next Tuesday. So they'll be doing a lot of collaborative work out in the community, and they'll be heavily involved in that training and advice piece. And in terms of inspiration, we want to put in place initiatives to inspire people. And so, for example, when we've got a new piece of infrastructure, maybe having an official opening, or bringing people there in Bike Week, where we'll have loads of training initiatives and so on. Or at Christmas time with the Enchanted Cycle there through the Enchanted Forest in Blanchardstown, which was great. And this year we'll also have a setup at Flavours of Fingal. So just bringing it to people's attention where and when we can. In terms of the outcomes, there's a number of them here, and increasing the number of journeys to work and college by foot and bike is really important to us. Delivering additional protected cycle routes, that's also very important. There's plenty of cycleways around the place where people are still a little bit concerned about safety, so the segregation issue is very important. providing more secure cycle parking spaces. We're working really hard on that one, and we've rolled out a lot of them even in the last year. Expanding and electrifying local bike share schemes. Again, we have the bike share scheme in place, and we're currently in the process of electrifying a bike share scheme. Initiating safety schemes at schools and in towns and villages. And as I mentioned, there's 11 of them underway at the moment, and we'll be rolling out more in the future. Ensuring that all new developments include measures to support active travel. That's a very significant piece, and is currently underway with our colleagues in planning, and we're working with them quite a lot and engaging with them on that piece too. I will bring my colleague Kieran Marr in on the next steps here.
Thanks, Sinead. So just as part of the public engagement piece, we are now engaging with various stakeholders, statutory stakeholders around the country, from the NTA to the TII, the Gardaí, the National Ambulance Service and the Fire Brigade, the HSE and the Chamber of Commerce have taken place. So we hope to have stakeholder engagements with them over the next number of weeks while the public consultation is taking place. So as part of the public consultation, it's a 7-week consultation, has been said from Roisin. 2 public webinars will take place. The first one, which is on today. There will be awareness raised by the communications department through social media and other formats. We hope at the end of this to have an easy read summary of the overall draft strategy, and that will be based on the consultation report. So there's a lot of consultation going on. We want as much people to submit as wide and varied as we can, so we can improve on the draft strategy going forward. Thanks, Sinead.
Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you both very much for that presentation. So we're going to stop sharing our slides now in just a moment. We're going to start taking some questions, and I believe that there's some questions coming in here into the Q&A box already. If you haven't had a chance to do so and you have a question that you'd like to ask, please open Q&A on the right hand side there and pop your questions in, and we're looking forward to answering them. I'm going to start now with the first question which has come in, which is, this looks like a lot of different projects are planned, and I'm worried that the things you put in, you may walk away from them. How can you be sure that they'll work, or that people really want them in their area? Sinead, would you like to start with that question, and you might like to bring in others on that also?
Okay, thanks, Roisin, for that question. Yeah, there is a lot going on, and we have a lot of projects planned. We have a lot of projects underway at the moment. And I understand the question means, essentially, is it going to be just put there and left? No is the answer. There's a couple of different elements to that. I've mentioned earlier on that we have our cycling and our walking officers, 2 of them, one starting on Tuesday. They'll be engaging very collaboratively with the communities to ensure that any new pieces of infrastructure will be going out and assisting people, particularly children, to use those pieces of infrastructure and encourage people to use those infrastructure pieces. We've also got a team that are working on other initiatives, such as Gearing Up for Training, which is an initiative to encourage, for example, sports clubs to get the children to cycle, to training and to home matches. And in essence, when the matches at home, it will free up the parking in the local sports club for the away teams. But there's things like new infrastructure and cycle training and so on required to assist people to use that. So I think that's an important element of making the best use of the infrastructure that's in place. The other element of it is the operation and the maintenance of the asset. Obviously, we have a different department that deals with the operation and maintenance of our assets, and we're working with them very collaboratively right through this whole process, right through the design process, the construction process. But also we're looking to the future as to how will their needs change. For example, if they're laying road resurfacing on a wide road now that becomes a narrower road with 2 cycle lanes on either side of it, how are they going to adjust their teams to set up things like that? Adjustments to drainage, for example, on cycleways, adjustments to widths of footpaths, and so on. So their operations programs are also evolving as the infrastructure is being put on the ground. So I think that hopefully answers the question.
Thanks, Sinead. That's a really comprehensive answer. I hope that that person is satisfied with the answer to that question. So the next question that's come in is from somebody who's concerned about local shops. They say, I want to see busy local shops in my area, and I'm worried you might be taking parking away to make these things happen. How will you balance the needs of businesses with the changes you want? Sinead, I'll come back to you now.
Okay, yeah, this is one that's coming up quite a lot, and obviously it's creating some concern for people. I think it's really important to say that everything we do is evidence-based. So we're looking in great detail at a lot of the research that's coming at us from various different projects that have been done overseas, but also other projects in closer to home in Ireland and so on. And I think there's some very interesting economic data available from Copenhagen Transport for London, but also from Dunleary Rathdown with regard to some schemes that they have done in both Dalkey and Blackrock, and the economic activity and the changes in economic activity that resulted from those adjustments that they made. I also think we'll be doing very significant engagement all the way through with the local traders, chambers of commerce and so on, and we'll be looking at their needs in that regard. I suppose in essence we need to just keep the collaboration and keep the talking going on and ensure that we bring economic activity into the areas. And I think freeing up some of the public space so that people have more time to linger, they can sit around, they can have a coffee, they can consider lingering and maybe going into shops that they wouldn't have before. That's also bringing the space back to the people is also something that's very prevalent in cities such as Copenhagen and Utrecht and Amsterdam and so on. So we're also looking at a lot of that activity. I think that's really important, and we'll be keeping an eye on our data as we go along, and all our projects will be doing a lot of before and after data in that regard.
Thanks, Sinead. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to pop up a quick slide here. So to get people thinking about the strategy, because we understand that things like this can be a little bit difficult to engage with sometimes, we've put together some prompts. So I hope you can see my screen there. And just to get you thinking, things that we'd love to hear from you tonight as a group are, do you agree with the broad aims and content of the strategy? If you've had a chance to look at it, what do you feel might be missing from it? Or what do you agree or disagree with? What should be the key priorities for the strategy for active travel in Fingal? How do you feel about the look and style of the document? Do you think the strategy perhaps needs a champion, which is a concept that's been discussed within the document? And how should we engage the wider community and persuade people to take action themselves? So some of these topics might be things that you're interested in thinking about as you come up with your questions. And as I said, you can pop any questions you have into the Q&A box that you'll find in the top right of your screen. So I'm going to take that prompt down now and move on to the next question. Pardon me, just a slight lag there. So questions come in regarding New Street and Malahide, Sinead, which you mentioned a few minutes ago. When do you plan to run another survey for Malahide New Street to get feedback from locals?
As soon as the public consultation starts in New Street and Malahide, there will be obviously there'll be an opportunity to make submissions on that. I know there was one done previously before the last one, and the next we're currently looking at a brief for engaging consultants, architectural consultants, to look at the actual whole public realm aspect of New Street Malahide, and we'll be looking at that during the public consultation for that phase.
Thanks, Sinead. I hope that answers the questioner's query. So a question here regarding the mention of chambers there a few minutes ago. This person says, do chambers really represent the businesses in the area? More often than not, they can only represent a small portion of local businesses, but Fingal County Council continue to use them as a benchmark. Sinead, is there any comments you'd like to make in response to that?
Yeah, I suppose our experience has been somewhat varied on that, and I think it is important to engage trader by trader, which we have done in some of our schemes, and with the Chamber of Commerce, both, because sometimes the views weren't exactly the same, exactly as that person has said. So you know, we certainly won't be stopping anything. We're delighted to be dealing with the chambers, and they bring a very dynamic piece to the actual consultation, but we will still be going door to door on any project that we have. That would just be best practice.
Right. So questions come in here now regarding green spaces. This person has asked, how will green spaces be protected when recreational and biodiversity spaces are potentially threatened by the level of construction and development, and with housing and apartments coming on in the Fingal region? Sinead, I'll bring you in on that first. If you want to bring anyone else in, please do.
Grant, I will just answer that, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Kieran Marr on specifics of green landscaping that's done in Baldoyle at the moment. But on a general note on that one, I think it's really important. As I said before, the multidisciplinary cross-department element of this is huge, and I am collaborating with my colleagues in the Planning and Strategic Infrastructure Department, and particularly with regard to the SUDS policy, which is a Sustainable Urban Drainage Policy, which will be implementing the 4 pillars of sustainable drainage into any of our schemes that we possibly can. And obviously there's a biodiversity is one of the key pillars of sustainable drainage, but we'd also be improving the water, reducing the water quantity runoff on the schemes where we can apply that. That will improve water quality, and then that will have a knock-on effect in terms of biodiversity and amenity. We have already implementing that in some rainwater gardens in St. Philip the Apostle School in Dublin 15, and that has gone in recently. And I think there will be rolling out further schemes of that nature in the future. But maybe if I can hand over to Kieran and just maybe make a few comments about what's going on in Baldoyle, Kieran.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, just when it comes to SUDS and issues around biodiversity, and that we actually want to add to the community. So it's not where we're taking away green space, removing trees, that type of idea. It's where we come along. We want to say provide rain gardens outside the front of schools, add in tree pits where their services allow. So it's trying to add back into to make green the community as we go pass through with these projects. So with public realm, again, there will be a lot of landscaping. We'll have landscape architects involved and all that. So it's trying to add to the community and not to take anything away as regards biodiversity. Thanks.
Thank you both very much. And to add to that, I think it's important for everybody on the call tonight to note that the Fingal Development Plan is currently out for public consultation also. And if your concerns are specifically around which areas get developed versus which areas don't, and how zoning and development works in the county, it would be really useful for you to look at that. It's online available at fingal.ie/development plan, and it's open for consultation until May the 12th. So your views on that are, of course, also very welcome. So to move on to the next question now, somebody has asked whether local link buses could be provided to run in local towns throughout Fingal, for example, Skerries to Rush, Lusk, Balbriggan and finishing in Skerries. Can I put that to you, Sinead?
Yeah, look, that's the sort of question or the sort of issue we'd be engaging with our colleagues in the economic enterprise, tourist and community development being in housing department also now at the moment. And as I said, we are collaborating quite closely with colleagues in all of the different departments, and that is an issue that has come up at a previous presentation I made, and is something that will be raised there. It is probably more of an issue also for the as Roshan has mentioned, for the public consultation on the on the county development plan. And I think that's maybe something I draw your attention to if you want to raise that in that forum.
Would it be helpful here to maybe clarify for the people who are on the call how the draft active travel strategy plays into the development plan and what the relationship between those two documents is?
Yeah, that's fine. The active travel strategy, as I've mentioned in the presentation, we currently have an objective in the development plan, which is in draft format at the moment, which is saying that we will prepare an active travel strategy, and the promotion of the active travel strategy will obviously be implemented through the development plan. It will have the support of the development plan is what I mean, what I'm trying to say. And I think having the support and the weight of the development plan behind you makes it just an easier thing to do in the future. So in essence, it is the policy of the development plan if it is mentioned in if the active travel strategy is mentioned in the development plan.
That's great. Thanks, Sinead. That's really helpful. I think a lot of people are maybe not familiar with how the development plan works. That's good to get that across. So I have another question in here now around transport systems again, which is clearly a key topic for those on the call tonight. And somebody has asked, why do councils compare our transport systems to other countries who have maybe more integrated transport systems compared to Dublin? Sinead, would you like to come in and comment on that?
Yeah. Well, look, I certainly I've recently been in Copenhagen and last year in the Netherlands, and I think it's really important that we look at how they do it in other countries. We look at best practice in other countries, and we don't necessarily have to copy everything that's done elsewhere. That's not in essence what we're doing. I think we need to pick and choose the things that we see that work well in those countries that could be applied well to Ireland. Culturally, things are different here. We have different transport structure. We have a different type of a city in terms of density and development. And I think it's really important that we see what can work there. So I think we are constantly referring to those other countries, and I think we need to do that because I think they have experienced some of the challenges. It's quite reassuring to hear them talking about the very significant challenges they have, which echo some of the challenges that we currently have, and maybe they've had them a few years before us. So it's interesting also to hear how they've maneuvered their way and worked their way through those challenges and achieved, for example, the sort of numbers they have in a city like Copenhagen cycling, where indeed their weather would be well, similar or probably worse than ours in terms of rainfall and temperatures as well. So I think it is really important to look at them, but we're not saying we will just do a mirror image of what they do in Dublin, because it doesn't work that way.
Thanks, Sinead. So we have another question here now around how active travel really looks for people in their day-to-day lives at the moment, with someone asking, with things like kissing gates, how are we supposed to get buggies and wheelchairs through, and what is Fingal doing to tackle that issue?
I might hand that one over to Kieran Maher, please.
Yeah, no, it's just obviously active travel. We want to make it more convenient and more direct for people to be able to go to the places they want to go to, whether it's schools, clubs, church, or whatever they need to go to. And we've been coming across a lot of requests coming in that a lot of barriers are to do with kissing gates. You can have issues with fences. I suppose I know of certain schools, as Sinead would have said, but you can see the school 100 meters away, but you have to get into the car and drive the circuitous route to get to it. So it's to be able to promote the idea that to remove these kissing gates, to remove these barriers for people, for universal access, really, for all, and not just to think of ourselves, and that we need to make it easier for people with buggies, with mobility issues, that if there's more direct circuitous routes, direct routes for them to get to where they want to go. And so in that regard, it's one of the pieces we're looking at in active travel to try and improve the permeability and connectivity.
Thanks, Kieran. That's a really helpful answer. So the concept of a active travel champion was raised earlier on in the presentation, and we have a question here from somebody who's wondering, could we describe what that role might look like or what they might be expected to do? Sinead, can I come to you on that one, please?
Sorry, Roisin, could you repeat that, please?
Pardon me, sorry, I think we're having some slight lag here in the office, apologies. So the concept of an active travel champion was raised in the slides earlier, and somebody has asked in the comments here, what does that role look like, or what would they be expected to do, and what kind of person might fulfill that role?
Okay, so we have a number of different active travel champions in the organisation already. Hopefully everybody on the line is one of them, including me. But I think what we're also looking at is maybe having active travel champions out there in the community, maybe in sporting clubs or in, for example, religious organisations or educational institutions and so on, and helping us fly the flag within their sector. As I say, if it's a sporting thing, if it's a drama club or whatever, we are also just considering whether we need to appoint somebody who is a Fingal-wide active travel champion, but that one hasn't been decided upon yet, because currently we're just looking at champions within the various different sectors.
That's great, thanks, Sinead. So another comment has come in here from somebody saying, not everybody can cycle or walk, and how do we include people in active travel and in the active travel strategy who maybe have disabilities or mobility issues?
Okay, I can take that one, and I suppose it's really important to say that maybe sometimes people feel there's a bit of targeting going on here, and there isn't. This is all about facilitation and promotion of active travel within the community. So there are, I suppose, a lot of statistics out there that would say that a lot of the cars on the road are on the road doing journeys of less than 2K. Now, I understand there's plenty of them doing more than that. There's plenty of people who have to be in their cars from because they have mobility issues, or they're going on longer journeys, or they're carrying a lot in their boot or whatever. But there still is a lot of data to say there's a lot of those journeys that are under 2K. So I suppose a lot of what we're doing is trying to target those journeys, because from a climate perspective, if we could actually shift a lot of those journeys onto the feet and onto the bicycles, we would actually take a lot of cars off the road, and we would forego a lot of carbon emissions into the environment. And the people who need the car park spaces, for example, or need the roads, will be more protected then, because in essence there will be less cars on the road. So I think that we really need to be that we understand that. And obviously people who are, for example, wheelchair users, a lot of what we're doing also is freeing up some of the public space, so maybe making the footpaths wider, or improving the quality of the footpaths, or including the connectivity between the footpaths, say for example, and the public bus. So I think in essence we're trying to do everything to protect the more vulnerable user, and then shift a certain type of user, if possible, where possible, out of their car for certain journeys.
Thanks, Sinead. So somebody has asked here, they say, you know, the promotion of active travel is obviously a priority for the council, but how does the promotion of active travel like walking and cycling infrastructure actually help their local community?
Kieran, I'll maybe hand that one over to you, please.
Well, there's a number of key benefits that I would see that would happen there. I think air pollution would be one. You're going to, by freeing up space for walking and cycling, you're trying to reallocate space, I suppose, away from the private car to the active travel modes of travel. So really what we're doing is we have data collection going on, and we do pre and post installation for air quality. That would be one thing that we would be positive to the local community. Another would be, again, obviously the traffic congestion. We'd hope to see that the traffic would be a modal shift away from the private car for shorter trips, for say 1 to 2K. That lets more people get out. It's better for their health, local community. It means they dwell longer on the street, outside the shops, outside the cafes, and it brings back some economic benefit into the towns and the villages around Fingal.
Thanks, Kieran. Apologies, we're having some difficulty with Kieran's camera at the moment, and you may have noticed that we just popped a slide up there while he was speaking. So his audio is live, but his camera is not. So apologies if anyone was confused by that. We have time for just about 1 or 2 more questions, and I have one here that says, how do you pick locations for cycle lanes? Is it linked into national plans, for example? Sinead, you might like to take this first, and I think you might like to also bring in others on this as well.
Okay, yeah. There's 2 things, I suppose, and again, this is part of the climate action plan. We're trying to look at, wherever possible, use existing road space. In essence, not using any new materials, hopefully not creating too much more carbon, putting too many more carbon emissions into the road, but reallocation of existing road space where it's wide enough. So we've managed to do that in a number of different areas, such as Hartstown, Huntstown and Dublin 15, River Valley, Rathingal, up in Swords, and it also in Baldoyle on the Grange Road. Also, a lot of what we're doing is aligning with the Greater Dublin Area Cycle Network Plan, and maybe I'd hand over to either Kieran or James to say a few words on that.
Yeah, I'll come in there, Sinead. There is the Greater Dublin Area Cycle Network Plan. It really drives a lot of the greenways, blueways, primary orbital routes that are planned in the Greater Dublin area over the next 10 years. So we would have been given allocations just from the NTA, our funding body, to roll out that network. So that's already been identified. Again, there will be pieces missing, that the linkages to that network plan that we would hope to get from submissions from people living in Fingal, that they'd like to see connections to the overall network.
Thanks, Kieran and Sinead, for your answer there. So we have another question in here now regarding the Sutton to Malahide project, which is one of the many active travel, walking and cycling projects and sustainable travel projects that's online at the moment and is open for public consultation. This person has asked, can we share some initial feedback from the public events associated with the Malahide to Sutton project? I've been involved in that project a bit myself, so I can probably take this one. If anybody else wants to chime in, please let me know. So we've had a number of public engagements at this stage. We've had 2 webinar events, and we've also had a public information evening. Over 100 people attended the public information evening, which took place in Portmarnock a number of weeks ago. And as with any project, there are people who are very happy about it and people who have some concerns about it. But generally, overall, the public feedback has been extremely positive. We've had a number of submissions, and like I said, that public consultation is still open to submissions, and we're still very much looking for people's opinions on that. And it can also be found on www.consult.fingal.ie. So if you have any particular interest in that, I'd encourage you to visit there, have a read of the documentation, and respond to that consultation if it's something you're very interested in. So with that, we seem to have come to the end of the list of questions for this evening. If anybody has an additional one that they'd like to get in quickly, we have a moment. If not, I'm going to start wrapping up. So thank you very much to those of you who joined us this evening. Apologies for the background noise here. We have the consultation is continuing to stay live until midnight on the 23rd of May. And as I said, if you'd like to make a submission, you can do so online at consult.fingal.ie, or you can find the postal submission information there if you'd like to make your submission in writing by post. Thank you very much to our panel who joined us here this evening, to Sinead and Kieran from the Active Travel section, to Paul from Sistra, our consultants, and to Daniel Leeson, who produced the webinar for us this evening and is a member of the communications team. You're very welcome to join us again on May 9th when we'll have another one of these webinars, and we'd really welcome your questions at that time. We'd also be delighted if you would share information about this webinar and the upcoming webinar and other events with your friends, colleagues and neighbours, as we said, who may also be interested in the topic. The consultation is open for a number of further weeks, and we look forward to promoting it heavily within that time and getting people as interested as possible. If you are at all interested in the future of how Fingal moves, we'd encourage you to go online, read the strategy, engage with it, and tell us what you think. Your opinions really matter, and we want to hear from everybody who lives, works and visits in Fingal on a regular basis, because you'll all be affected by the decisions made that come out of this strategy. Thanks again to those of you who joined us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again on May the 9th. Good night.